Welcome to this collection of motivational, inspirational, and spiritual speeches by Oprah Winfrey. Oprah is one of the most influential people in the world, and her words have helped millions of people find their purpose, overcome challenges, and live their best lives. We hope you will find these speeches as inspiring and uplifting as we do. And if you're feeling down, we encourage you to watch one of these speeches and let Oprah's words give you the boost you need. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
I changed how I viewed power about 1989. There was a book I read by a man named Gary Zukov called Seat of the Soul. And in Seat of the Soul, he defined what is true power, what is authentic power. And his definition of authentic power, meaning the kind of power that can never be taken from you. Not your looks, not your fame, not your money, not your square footage, but authentic power is when your personality comes to serve the energy of your soul. When you are able to align who you are, who you've become in the world, with really what you've come to do in the world, when your personality serves the soul. So I thought a lot about that. That book was actually life-changing for me. And I was building a home in Santa Barbara. And as anybody who's ever built a bathroom or a home or anything, nothing ever happens on time. And it was 2002 and we're supposed to be finished and it wasn't finished. And I was like, I can't wait to get in my house and I'm finally gonna have a great Christmas and I'm gonna do the kind of Christmas that I dreamed of from the Courier and Ives, cards. So I'm gonna have the wreaths on the door, but I didn't have a floor, so it's a little difficult to do that. So I started to think, if I can't do that Christmas, well, what am I going to do for Christmas? My house isn't even ready, and what can I do? So I started, as I was walking around through the trees, sitting under that tree, because my favorite time is to be alone with my thoughts. And as I was alone with my thoughts, I was thinking, what would be the next best possible Christmas for myself? And I thought of the best Christmas I ever had. The best Christmas I ever had was when I was 12 years old. My mother was on welfare. I was living with my mother and a half brother and sister in Milwaukee. And my mother called me, the oldest, into a room to say, we won't be having Christmas this year. I said, we won't be having Christmas. What about Santa Claus? There is no Santa Claus. I had already figured that out, but okay. I was embarrassed and I was ashamed because for the first time, I had to face the reality that, what I've been suspecting, that we're not like the other kids, that we really are poor, is true. So we're not going to have Christmas and there is no Santa Claus. My first thought after being embarrassed and ashamed was, what will my story be? What am I going to tell everybody when we go back to school and they're showing their toys and I don't have anything to talk about? What am I going to do? I'm not going to go outside tomorrow when everybody's out in the yards, in their yards, showing the toys they got for Christmas. I'm going to stay inside. Am I going to pretend I'm sick? What is my story going to be? Well, late that night, some nuns showed up at our house and they brought a basket of food and they brought toys for my brother and my sister. And I was overwhelmed with joy that those nuns showed up. Not because they brought me a Tammy doll when I really wanted a Barbie doll. I was overwhelmed because somebody remembered that we existed and somebody cared enough in the middle of the night to come to our house with food and toys. And also I would now have a story. So as I was contemplating that was the best Christmas I ever had, I thought, how could I make that possible for somebody else? What could I do to create the same kind of experience for other children? So I took 50 members of my team at Harpo, Harriet, one of them, Sherry, the table, and hired another 50 people in South Africa. And we went to South Africa with the idea of creating something that we ended up doing a documentary about called Christmas Kindness. Christmas Kindness, using my personality to serve the energy of my soul. So we went from village to village, offering toys and clothes, food, soccer balls to children who'd never experienced Christmas before. And early in the morning, you could see them lining up by the thousands to come. And we actually went to 10 or 12 villages to do this. And people said to me at the time, oh, that's so frivolous, and the kids won't remember it, and why don't you use your money to do something else more substantial, Oprah? And I said, they may not remember the toy. They may not remember the clothes, although they were most excited, the children, to open boxes containing clothes because, as their caretaker said to us, having new clothes made them not feel poor. And for so many of these kids, it was the first time they'd ever experienced having something that was new for them. They may not remember what they got in the box, but they will remember that somebody remembered them. They will remember the experience. So during this entire experience, Nelson Mandela had invited Stedman and I to stay at his home. So when Nelson Mandela invites you, you stay. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk to? Because it's 10 days. It's 10 days. It's not just a dinner. It's not a lunch. It's 10 days. It's 10 days, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with Nelson Mandela. What am I going to say? Stedman said, why don't you try listening? So I did. I had 29 meals with Nelson Mandela. At first, really, I was very, like, oh my God, it's Nelson Mandela. And by the third or fourth day, he and I would sit together in his living room, sharing the paper at the end of the day, talking about events in the world. And one of the things we came to talk about the most was the power of education to overcome poverty. So in one of those lucid moments, I said to him, well, I've always wanted to build a school. He said, you want to build a school? Oprah, you want to build a school? So he got up and made a phone call to the Minister of Education. I wasn't planning on building it then. But all right. The Minister of Education comes over later in the day and we start the process of building a school. The reason why I wanted to build a school, because I tried different things, because I always knew, even before I could articulate, that my personality needs to serve my soul. I always knew that to whom much is given, as the Bible says, much is expected. Much is not just expected, much is required. So from the first time I came to Chicago and started to make more money than I needed to actually pay my bills, I reached out and was going to form a sister group trying to help young girls in the project. And I discovered I wasn't able to do what I really needed to change the trajectory of those girls' lives, because every girl that we would take out of the project and spend time with on the weekends, my producers and I, they would have to go back home into the same environment. And it was impossible to just change the way they saw themselves in the world. So by trial and error, I knew that in order to literally change the way a girl sees herself, I would need enough time to spend with her, to be able to hire the right kind of teachers, the right kind of administration, to be surrounded by a nurturing environment, to allow that girl to change the way she felt about herself and saw herself in the world. So the idea of creating a boarding school that was surrounded by beauty, the kind of school that I would want to go to. And I tell you, when I first sat down with the architects and said, I want to build a great school for leaders that will change the lives of women, and they will be able to break the cycle of poverty for themselves and their families forever, and become a part of the real and true new and free South Africa. Well, the architect said to me, well, these are poor girls. These girls. I said, well, where are the closets? Where's the space? Where's the drama? Where's the theater? And they said, well, these are poor girls. These girls really don't come from families with clothes, and a lot of them have lost their families. And I said, but they will have clothes, and they will be able to do drama, and they will be able to excel beyond anybody's dreams. And that is exactly what has happened 5 years later. The real power of being somebody that somebody knows, and I really think that the only difference between being famous and not is that more people know your name. So the only difference between understanding that is understanding that what Selma has done, what Susan has done, what Anna has done, Rebecca has done, what Jim has done, what I've done, you too can do. Because true philanthropy comes from living from the heart of yourself and giving what you have been given. How will you do that? How will you use your personality, the energy of your personality, to serve that which is your soul's calling? I know this for sure. Any life, no matter how fantastic it is, how glorious it seems, how much attention you receive, how much square footage you have, any life and every life is enhanced by the sharing and the giving and the opening up of the heart space. Your life gets better when you can find a way to share it with someone else. So what we've done, you can do. The real empowerment comes when every person leaves this room and makes a decision. Maybe that decision is that you will write a check and support some of the wonderful organizations you've heard here today. But the true decision is, how will you use yourself? How will you use everything that you have been given to serve that which is greater than yourself? How will you use that to become truly, authentically empowered? My beloved mentor, teacher, friend, mother, Maya Angelou, passed away last year. And I remember when I opened the school, I was so happy that finally it happened. We got it done and got through all the bureaucracy and all the stuff that it takes to build a school from the ground up. And I said to Maya, oh my God, Maya, this is my legacy. And Maya said, you have no idea what your legacy is. Your legacy is every life you have touched. Your legacy is every person you have met whose influence was felt by you. Every single person. So she said, it's every person who's ever watched a show and decided that they were going to go back to school, or watched a show and decided that I'm going to leave my husband. I'm going to no longer be a victim of abuse. Every person who watched a show and said, I am a victim of abuse, and because I saw this, I now can stand up for myself. Every person who gained a voice because of you. You have no idea what your legacy is. Your legacy is every life that you touch. And so, as you leave here today, the decision is, whose lives will that be? How will you use yourself in such a way that your impact and your legacy will live beyond the doing? So the great reward for me is knowing that what I'm doing and how I've done it and how I choose to live in the space that I call God, how in God I move and breathe and have my being, and I try to move from the center of that, is able to literally touch the lives of other people. I said to the girls when they first came to the school, we found them in villages and we found them in townships. We went out, some kids having school in a boxcar on a railroad track and some under a tree. And I said to the girls, the trajectory of your life is about to change. And I only ask one thing of you, is that you give as much of yourself as I and this school is willing to give to you. And when you change a girl's life, you don't just change a girl's life, you change the community's life, you change a family's life. Because what girls do is they take it back home, they take it to their families, they take it to their communities.
The beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take that away from you. And learning is really, in the broadest sense, what I really want to talk about today, because your education, of course, isn't ending here. In many ways, it's only just begun. The world has so many lessons to teach you. I consider the world, this earth, to be like a school, and our life, the classrooms. And sometimes here in this planet Earth school, the lessons often come dressed up as detours or roadblocks, and sometimes as full-blown crises. And the secret I've learned to getting ahead is being open to the lessons from the grandest universe of all, that is the universe itself. It's being able to walk through life eager and open to self-improvement and that which is going to best help you evolve, because that's really why we're here, to evolve as human beings. So, to grow into being more of ourselves, always moving to the next level of understanding, the next level of compassion and growth. I think one of the greatest compliments I've ever received, I interviewed with a reporter when I was first starting out in Chicago, and then many years later I saw the same reporter and she said to me, you know what? You really haven't changed. You've just become more of yourself. And that is really what we're all trying to do, become more of ourselves. And I believe that there is a lesson in almost everything that you do in every experience. And getting the lesson is how you move forward. It's how you enrich your spirit. And trust me, I know that inner wisdom is more precious than wealth. The more you spend it, the more you gain. So today, I just want to share a few lessons, meaning 3. The 3 lessons that have had the greatest impact on my life have to do with feelings, with failure, and with finding happiness. A year after I left college, I was given the opportunity to co-anchor the 6 o'clock news in Baltimore, because the whole goal in the media at the time I was coming up was that you try to move to larger markets, and Baltimore was a much larger market than Nashville. So getting the 6 o'clock news co-anchor job at 22 was such a big deal. It felt like the biggest deal in the world at the time. And I was so proud because I was finally going to have my chance to be like Barbara Walters, which is who I'd been trying to emulate since the start of my TV career. So I was 22 years old, making $22,000 a year. And it's where I met my best friend Gail, who was an intern at the same TV station. And once we became friends, we'd say, oh my God, I can't believe it. You're making $22,000 and you're only 22. Imagine when you're 40 and you're making 40. When I turned 40, I was so glad that didn't happen. So here I am, 22, making $22,000 a year. And yet, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. The first sign, as President Hennessy was saying, was when they tried to change my name. The news director said to me at the time, nobody's going to remember Oprah, so we want to change your name. We've come up with a name we think that people will remember and people will like. It's a friendly name, Susie. Very friendly. You can't be angry with Susie. Remember Susie. But my name wasn't Susie. And you know, I'd grown up not really loving my name, because when you're looking for your little name on the lunch boxes and the license plate tags, you're never going to find Oprah. So I grew up not loving the name, but once I was asked to change it, I thought, well, it is my name. And do I look like a Susie to you? So I thought, no, it doesn't feel right. I'm not going to change my name. And if people remember it or not, that's okay. And then they said they didn't like the way I looked. This was in 1976, where your boss could call you in and say, I don't like the way you look. Now that would be called lawsuit. But Back then, they could just say, I don't like the way you look, which in case some of you in the back, if you can't tell, is nothing like Barbara Walters. So they sent me to a salon where they gave me a perm, and after a few days, all my hair fell out, and I had to shave my head. And then they really didn't like the way I looked, because now I am black and bald and sitting on TV. Not a pretty picture. But even worse than being bald, I really hated being sent to report on other people's tragedies as a part of my daily duty, knowing that I was just expected to observe when everything in my instinct told me that I should be doing something, I should be lending a hand. So, as President Hennessy said, I'd cover a fire, and then I'd go back and I'd try to give the victims blankets. And I wouldn't be able to sleep at night because of all the things I was covering during the day. And meanwhile, I was trying to sit gracefully like Barbara and make myself talk like Barbara. And I thought, well, I could make a pretty goofy Barbara. And if I could figure out how to be myself, I could be a pretty good Oprah. I was trying to sound elegant like Barbara. And sometimes I didn't read my copy because something inside me said, this should be spontaneous, it should be spontaneous. So I wanted to get the news as I was giving it to the people. So sometimes I wouldn't read my copy and it'd be like 6 people in a pileup on I-40. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I wouldn't read the copy and because I wanted to be spontaneous, and I'd come across a list of words I didn't know and mispronounce. And one day I was reading copy and I called Canada, Canada. And I decided this Barbara thing's not going too well. I should try being myself. But at the same time, my dad was saying, Oprah Gail, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. You better keep that job. And my boss was saying, this is the nightly news. You're an anchor, not a social worker. Just do your job. So I was juggling these messages of expectation and obligation and feeling really miserable with myself. I'd go home at night and fill up my journals, because I've kept a journal since I was 15, so I now have volumes of journals. So I'd go home at night and fill up my journals about how miserable I was and frustrated, and then I'd eat my anxiety. That's where I learned that habit. And after 8 months, I lost that job. They said I was too emotional, I was too much. But since they didn't want to pay off the contract, they put me on a talk show in Baltimore. And the moment I sat down on that show, the moment I did, I felt like I'd come home. I realized that TV could be more than just a playground, but a platform for service, for helping other people lift their lives. And the moment I sat down doing that talk show, it felt like breathing. It felt right. And that's where everything that followed for me began. And I got that lesson. When you're doing the work you're meant to do, it feels right. And every day is a bonus, regardless of what you're getting paid. And how do you know when you're doing something right? How do you know that? It feels so. What I know now is that feelings are really your GPS system for life. When you're supposed to do something or not supposed to do something, your emotional guidance system lets you know. The trick is to learn to check your ego at the door and start checking your gut instead. Every right decision I've made, every right decision I've ever made has come from my gut. And every wrong decision I've ever made was a result of me not listening to the greater voice of myself. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. That's the lesson. And that lesson alone will save you, my friends, a lot of grief. Even doubt means don't. This is what I've learned. There are many times when you don't know what to do. When you don't know what to do, get still. Get very still until you do know what to do. And when you do get still and let your internal motivation be the driver, not only will your personal life improve, but you will gain a competitive edge in the working world as well. Because as Daniel Pink writes in his bestseller, A Whole New Mind, He says we're entering a whole new age, and he calls it the conceptual age, where traits that set people apart today are going to come from our hearts, right brain, as well as our heads. It's no longer just the logical, linear, rules-based thinking that matters, he says. It's also empathy and joyfulness and purpose, inner traits that have transcendent worth. These qualities bloom when we're doing what we love. So when we're involving the wholeness of ourselves in our work, both our expertise and our emotion. So I say to you, forget about the fast lane. If you really want to fly, just harness your power to your passion. Honor your calling. Everybody has one. Trust your heart, and success will come to you. So how do I define success? Let me tell you, money's pretty nice. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that it's not about money, because money is very nice. I like money. It's good for buying things. But having a lot of money does not automatically make you a successful person. What you want is money and meaning. You want your work to be meaningful, because meaning is what brings the real richness to your life. What you really want is to be surrounded by people you trust and treasure, and by people who cherish you. That's when you're really rich. So lesson 1, follow your feelings. If it feels right, move forward. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Now I want to talk a little bit about failings, because nobody's journey is seamless or smooth. We all stumble, we all have setbacks. If things go wrong, you hit a dead end, as you will. It's just life's way of saying, time to change course. So ask every failure. This is what I do. Every failure, every crisis, every difficult time, I say, what is this here to teach me? And as soon as you get the lesson, you get to move on. If you really get the lesson, you pass and you don't have to repeat the class. If you don't get the lesson, it shows up wearing another pair of pants or skirt to give you some remedial work. And what I found is that difficulties come when you don't pay attention to life's whisper, because life always whispers to you first. And if you ignore the whisper, sooner or later, you'll get a scream. Whatever you resist persists, but if you ask the right question, not why is this happening, but what is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach me? It puts you in the place and space to get the lesson you need. My friend Eckhart Tolle, who's written this wonderful book called A New Earth, that's all about letting the awareness of who you are stimulate everything that you do. He puts it like this. He says, don't react against a bad situation, merge with that situation instead, and the solution will arise from the challenge. Because surrendering yourself doesn't mean giving up, it means acting with responsibility. What matters most is what's inside. What matters most is the sense of integrity, of quality, and beauty. I got that lesson. Not a small topic, this is, finding happiness. But in some ways, I think it's the simplest of all. Gwendolyn Brooks wrote a poem for her children. It's called Speech to the Young, Speech to the Progress Toward. And she says at the end, live not for battles won, live not for the end of the song, live in the along. She's saying, like Eckhart Tolle, that you have to live for the present. You have to be in the moment. Whatever has happened to you in your past has no power over this present moment, because life is now. But I think she's also saying, be a part of something. Don't live for yourself alone. This is what I know for sure. In order to be truly happy, you must live along with, and you have to stand for something larger than yourself, because life is a reciprocal exchange. To move forward, you have to give back. And to me, that is the greatest lesson of life. To be happy, you have to give something back. The lesson here is clear, and that is, if you're hurting, you need to help somebody else ease their hurt. If you're in pain, help somebody else's pain. And when you're in a mess, You get yourself out of the mess, helping somebody out of theirs. And in the process, you get to become a member of what I call the greatest fellowship of all, the sorority of compassion and the fraternity of service. Helping others is the way we help ourselves. And this wisdom is increasingly supported by scientific and sociological research. It's no longer just woo-woo soft skills talk. There's actually a helper's high, a spiritual surge you gain from serving others. So if you want to feel good, you have to go out and do some good. But when you do good, I hope you strive for more than just the good feeling that service provides, because I know this for sure, that doing good actually makes you better. So whatever field you choose, if you operate from the paradigm of service, I know your life will have more value and you will be happy. I was always happy doing my talk show, but that happiness reached a depth of fulfillment, of joy, that I really can't describe to you or measure when I stopped just being on TV and looking at TV as a job and decided to use television, to use it and not have it use me, to use it as a platform to serve my viewers. That alone changed the trajectory of my success. If you choose to offer your skills and talent in service, when you choose the paradigm of service, looking at your life through that paradigm, it turns everything you do from a job into a gift. So you've been enriched in countless ways. There's no better way to make your mark on the world than to share that abundance with others. My constant prayer for myself is to be used in service for the greater good. So let me end with one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King. Dr. King said, "Not everybody can be famous." And I don't know if everybody today seems to want to be famous, but fame is a trip. People follow you to the bathroom, listen to you pee. It's just say, "Oh my God, it's you peed." Oh. That's the fame trip. So I don't know if you want that. So, Dr. King said, not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. Yet those of you who are history scholars may know the rest of that passage. He said, you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato or Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love.